Part 2. Let's go.
Okay, and moving on, I thought it would be I like to do an update on the status of our own Thrive plan annually. And thought it would be especially useful for new counselors and counselors new to the committee. So we asked Director Mickelson to come and do that today. She's done this a couple times in the past, and I think seeing the breadth and the scope of the Thrive plan and the work that's being done is always really helpful for the committee and for folks who are watching at home in here in the audience. So I'll turn it over to you, Morgan.
Thank you, Chairman. It is a big one. The report itself is of over 100 pages, so bear with me. I'm going to try to get through it quickly tonight.
Good God.
I also wanted to take the opportunity to kind of explain a bit about Thrive's creation and the components to it as we dig into the updates as well. So thank you for inviting me to be here this evening, members of the committee. I'm Morgan Mickelson. I lead the Office of Sustainability. Two members of my team are with me this evening. Lindsay Tremere is our Community Engagement Manager. Madison Byerly is our Project Manager focused on thriving buildings. Mo McReynolds is not here tonight. She's our Senior Project Manager, does a bit of everything. Just want you to know the faces so that we're always available to you should you have any questions. So this is a high-level agenda of what we'll go over this evening. Here's a brief summary of our areas of focus. You might have heard of Thriving Buildings. It's our energy benchmarking and transparency ordinance. I'll get into a little bit about what that means. And most of these others we will touch on as well this evening. So high-level accomplishments real quick. Thriving Neighbor Series, this is something we're really excited about. Lindsay secured a $15,000 grant from the Urban Sustainability Directors Network to conduct this really creative community engagement solution. So she's actually partnering with Indy Parks to bring a series of climate-focused educational family engagement events throughout Indianapolis. So those will be throughout March, April, and May, really coinciding well with Earth Day and, everyone kind of emerging from winter. So more to come on that soon. We'd be happy to share schedules with you. Any questions as well. Here is a high-level overview of the different grant opportunities we've pursued. We know a few of them we weren't successful in, and some we're still waiting to hear back on. I put this here because we're in an unprecedented era right now. There is huge amounts of funding right now. The IRA is truly the first climate bill that the federal government has ever issued.
There is so much money to be laundered with taxpayers' money. OMG.
And so it's kind of a frenzy in going after federal funds right now. So I'm happy to answer any specific questions here. The Recycling Education Outreach Grant, as well as the DOT's Charging, Fueling, and Infrastructure Grant, we know that we were not successful in.
I encourage you to pause this and look how much our taxpayer money is being wasted on bullshit.
Receiving those grants. Again, we've received some feedback around just unprecedented amounts of applications. There was about 20 grants available for the Recycling Education Outreach Grant, over 200 applicants. So the EPA is also dealing with this huge influx of attention, and it's taking a lot. It's a lot for everyone.
I hate you all.
Solar for All is a really unique opportunity. We're a part of a couple different coalitions, and that could be transformative in terms of putting solar on the rooftops of qualified households. Could really change the face of, rooftops in our communities. Additionally, the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant program you might have heard a little bit about, because that's where a huge amount of money is available. So the MSA, Indianapolis MSA, from here up to Anderson, received $1 million from the EPA to create a priority climate action plan. We're currently finalizing that right now. And then we will be submitting the application for the second round of this process, going after $500 million for our region. 40 million represents dollars that would come back to us immediately here in Indianapolis, and then we'd be eligible to go after more as well. Part of the idea is that they're creating little banks of money for programs that they want to spearhead in Indianapolis. That is being led through the Central Indiana Regional Development Authority out of Fishers.
So lame.
Oh, I might have clicked too close. Okay. So briefly, before we get too much into Thrive, I want to provide a little context around climate risks we see specifically in Indianapolis. More high heat index days, along with just more high heat days, are definitely one of our top threats in Indianapolis. You can see here we have a steady increase of the heat index being over 90 degrees. That has significant impacts on our public health and puts at risk our most vulnerable residents.
We've had 3 more days with a heat index over 90. OMG. Stop the tracks. Let's have COVID again. Oh boy, stop the world. It's so over, boys.
Similarly, urban heat island. This is the idea that our downtown core, anywhere with a lot of buildings, a lot of built environment, is just hotter than when you go to a park. You know, there's natural shading, but also that vegetation absorbs rather than reflects, absorbs and re-emits the sun's heat.
So what she's saying is we need to tear down all the buildings in downtown Indianapolis. Listen, Center Township, I'm sorry, but you're the reason for climate change, and you all have to die, according to Morgan.
And so that
It's all
results in
satire,
significantly,
by
the
the way.
built environment results in significantly hotter air temperature for our residents. Here you can see 17,000 people throughout Marion County experience this phenomenon, and we could also, you know, overlay a map there to identify neighborhoods that we could probably assume they have low tree canopy, etc.
Whoa, 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 whoa. What's going on over here? Why is it all hot over here? Huh.
The third piece is more intense rainfall. This is especially how we're experiencing it in like high volume events, which tend to overwhelm our stormwater infrastructure. And I'm sure you can all understand what kind of risk that poses to us. It's dangerous flooding. It's also tough on our infrastructure, right?
You know, it's funny. Last year they were talking about how we didn't have any rain for so long, and now it's like, now it's too much rain. Average. I mean, so
All right,
dumb.
Let me just make a quick comment,
Yeah.
Director, just so the committee knows. I've been having some discussions with the director and with Director Hurt about in a future meeting, talking about in the last budget we passed, there's further investments made with DPW to deal with mitigation because of the higher preponderance of trees falling and the fact that DPW has to be ready to deal with those kind of situations. So how Indianapolis is planning to mitigate that or address that, the effects of climate change with the intense rainfall and the trees that fall and the downstream effects of that. So more to come on that for the committee. So we'll have some updates on that coming up soon.
You know how you fix some of that? You get rid of some of the dead branches. Or here's a thought. People should be helping clean out the drains, or at least off the drains. So like I live off of Rockville Road, and last year I went and cleaned out all the garbage, and not out of the drain itself, but the grates. So it had a better flow. I mean, the people that have that grate should be cleaning it. I mean, it's hard enough to even mow their lawn, but what do you expect? You got a bunch of lazy people who don't want to contribute to their community, and this is what happens. You make everybody reliant on the government for this.
Thank you. There's also a great IBJ article about that associated funding. And I don't have it in this slide, but we've celebrated before the first green bond that our city received that designation for. And it was actually for investing in our stormwater infrastructure. All right. So we're going to dig into Thrive a bit now. First, a brief overview of what Thrive is, what are the components, just so you can understand how to navigate it a little better. Thrive is incorporated into our comprehensive plan for Marion County. Additionally, Thrive has a special resolution that was authored by Mayor Hogsett, setting us on course for carbon neutrality by 2050. Extensive engagement, community engagement was undertaken in 2018 for the development of this process, and the residents were really critical in helping to identify action items that everyone agreed upon, because it's not just our plan, right? The community really also has a stakeholder in this plan.
This is funny right here. Hey, how many, did you get enough blacks to talk to? Did you have enough Asians? Oh, this is my favorite. Did you get a Latinx?
This is a high-level overview of our social vulnerability index assessment.
What is this bullshit?
This is really how we ensure that we're incorporating equity in our decision-making process. So the map here on the left is for social vulnerability throughout Marion County. There are 12 different socioeconomic indicators mapped here, ranging from your age, so if you're under 18, great, over 65, those experiencing poverty, limited English proficiency. There's a number. Happy to provide that list if you're interested. But then we overlaid that with specific climate risks. Here you see the maximum daily temperature, and so those two together, you start to understand where our vulnerable populations reside throughout the county.
Computer. Overlay.
Oh, I'm turning this too fast. And this is the components of Thrive. So we have two overarching goals, core values that really guide decision-making, 8 plan elements, key objectives and action items, and then we track annually the performance metrics and the output metrics. Those metrics aren't always something that we have control over, but rather they're a larger indicator to show us how progress is going. So here are the two overarching goals that I mentioned just briefly. Prioritizing equity in our decision-making and project implementation. That's really guided by that social vulnerability index, and now the federal administration has new tools available to us, such as the CJUST tool, different climate justice tools that you can kind of see those maps in real time. Additionally, you often hear it as referred to Justice 40 communities. That's the Biden administration's executive order to ensure that benefits are going to, that at least 40% of all benefits are going to these communities identified. I also mentioned that we have a special resolution calling for the achievement of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. This is our plan elements. I'm going to go through these a little bit more closely, but I like this graphic just to show that it's all interconnected and an integral part of, a thriving community. And it's taking a minute to load because there's a lot of graphics on this, so I'm going to go ahead and skip it. It's just like we do a fun social media thing where when we achieve an action item, we show a medal and talk about what the action item is. Sorry that apologize, that's not loading for us.
Just click.
Oh, That's
I don't know how much money you want to spend, but
yeah. I think we discussed that. So,
I have commented in the past that your office's social media game is very high performing. Yeah.
Why do they have?
thank you, Lindsay.
Oh, there's two. Of them. Stat
Happy to dig
benefits.
into these if anyone has questions.
What is this? Increase access to SNAP benefits. Get more food stamps. That's what we need. We need more people on food stamps.
We're not going to touch on them all tonight. It's also worth noting that this is, a 10 plus of 59 different action items. It shouldn't be surprised that this is a plan without a whole lot of funding dedicated to it. And so I think we're doing pretty well for what we have achieved. All right, so our first element is the built environment. Basically, this is really important because 2/3 of our greenhouse gas emissions come from the built environment. That basically means the operation of our buildings, right? Cooling, heating, etc. In 2021, we passed the benchmarking and transparency ordinance. That basically just means that benchmarking means that you are tracking your utility consumption on a regular basis. It is one of the largest non-fixed expenses that building owners face, and so it's a really critical piece. You can find billing errors and all sorts of things by tracking this. And so 2021, we passed this. 2022, we began implementing. It was a voluntary year, but the city did start benchmarking on their own. We started with 50,000 square feet and above buildings that were larger. In 2023, we went down to 25,000 square feet for city-owned buildings, and then we began outreach to buildings greater than 100,000 square feet. We are now starting another phase, conducting outreach down to 50,000 square feet, where we will ultimately land, and then we'll integrate a couple other pieces of the policy in future years, including transparency, which we'll begin sharing with community how these buildings are operating. So I think these are some really cool numbers. Of course, they are relatively small when we look at the numbers. For 2023, about 900 buildings is what we expected to be in that outreach period. Or that initial outreach phase. And so 250 is a chunk of that, but just continuing education and also refining that list. We got some bounce backs in the mail of that building doesn't actually exist or is undergoing renovations and other things. So there's a lot to dig into in here. So we'll just continue refining that list and continue refining our education as well. This is one of the pieces of education. We regularly hold during our compliance season, which is the beginning of the year, data jams. That's basically training to the building owners of how they can input their utility information into the free tool called Portfolio Manager. And then we turn around and create building profiles with that data. It kind of gets building owners excited to see
I get real excited
charts and things of how they're doing.
You're like, am I doing okay, comrade? Yes, my Führer. I'm only using the minimum amount of energy so I can do my business.
We've also started to establish a partnership with Purdue here locally. I'm not sure what they're called. Their Industrial Assessment Center. They actually their students conduct energy audits, and so we're going to be pairing them up with building owners to begin conducting energy audits of buildings that have interested owners. This is also on the flyer that you all have received, but a short plug for our upcoming data jams that Madison will be leading. If you have any building owners that may be interested, please feel free to pass along.
Gross.
And it will be a meeting in which you'll actually, dig in and do some of the work and walk away with something done and accomplished. All right, we're moving on to the economy section. This is where I'd like to briefly discuss the Indiana Energy Independence Fund. This action item actually lives in the built economy, but I think it's worth talking about in all opportunities that we get because it could be really huge for Indiana. It's basically going to be a green bank, which is the idea of creating a financing mechanism focused on low interest loans for energy efficiency and renewable energy. That is all they'll be lending for. It will be a nonprofit. I say it will be, but it's actually already fully established. They just not have begun lending activity yet. And they will be focused on Indianapolis, but they're statewide as well.
Gee, there won't be any corruption involved with that because all nonprofits are totally uncorruptible.
A key piece here, they'll also be working to establish relationships with contractors, ensuring that the contractors are ready to take on this kind of work, but also finding opportunities to train new individuals. And hopefully a workforce development program can come out of this.
That's what all those illegals are here for. Put up solar panels.
Closely related is the energy sector element, rather. So here I want to highlight a few different areas that we're working diligently in. The integrated resource planning with AES Indiana, that happens every 3 years, and so that just happened last year. So we'll be re-engaged with that in another year or so. But that basically is AES's process for projecting how they're going to meet the energy demands for the next 20 years. Last year, Courtney did present to the committee, and I think that being involved in that process is really critical so AES understands our concerns and our goals. MISO Concerned Communities Coalition, this is a new organization that we're a part of. MISO is our grid operator, and so they work really behind the scenes. It's all like super technical, hard to understand, and the grid needs to be prepared for renewable energy for this transition. And so we're working with the Great Plains Institute and a number of other cities throughout the central part of the nation to begin voicing our priorities.
They're activists, is what it is. Hey, you know what? The grid can't handle solar panels and wind farms and whatever bullshit you guys want because it doesn't put off enough power. So, you know, that whole coal plant and natural gas and maybe a little nuclear, yeah, we don't want that. We don't want reliable energy. We want something really sketchy. And I do want to make a point about this stuff for those solar panel people. The only way for things to work out well with solar is first off the panels, and second off, you need to find a way to store the energy. This is nothing, it's just like your body. You're consuming these calories and they store into energy, and then you use it. And then you get hungry again, or then you exhaust that out, right, through poop and pee. And then you have to consume more to turn it into energy. But you have no way of storing the energy from the solar panels because you're not using that energy all the time. So it would be a better idea if you're able to store it, but then you have to have a cooling system. Then it has to be regulated so the thing doesn't get caught on fire for some reason. And, you know, these are all the problems that you run into.
Additionally, we're exploring how we might be able to put solar on a closed municipal landfill. That would be really cool. There's a lot of questions, so.
Oh, gee, you think?
Just putting that out
Morons.
there.
God, these people are so stupid.
You know, everyone knowing that we're exploring this kind of helps the ball get rolling. And Soul Smart certification. I mentioned that Solar for All grant. If we have multiple millions of dollars to put solar on the rooftops of homes, we need to be ensuring that our permitting process is streamlined, and so this can help us do that. And
yeah, because BNS sucks.
so we're engaging with BNS, and hopefully we'll have a certification to announce soon. All right, food and urban agriculture. This is one of those areas that is solely done within another department. but it shows how everything's interconnected, and my goals are their goals are my goals, etc. So the Office of Public Health and Safety Division of, I always get the acronym wrong, Community Nutrition and Food Policy, goodness, is just a rock star in this space. They champion so many efforts in terms of food access and ensuring all residents have access to healthy and nutritious food. The Local Grocers Coalition is a really unique one with a cool sustainability angle, because part of the requirements is that you commit to offering local and in-season food, and that has really big impacts on our sustainability.
Is anybody using that? Do we have like any data on this stuff? Like, where are they at?
Within the natural resources element, we achieved a really great accomplishment, completed an action item, excuse me, last year by planting our 30,000th tree with KIB. Keep Indianapolis Beautiful is our partner that plants the majority of our trees. The Office of Sustainability manages that contract. They also help us organize neighborhoods to pick up litter, to do the cleanups, etc. But yeah, they've been our partner for quite a while now, planting trees. Chairman, I know you were mentioning earlier the different protocol that we could explore with city forest credits to generate additional revenue for tree plantings. Currently, just so everyone is aware, through our contract with KIB does maintain our trees for 3 years after planting. Those are, we find, the most critical years, when they need a lot of water and a lot of care, pruning upwards so they don't grow into the sidewalk, and etc. So we find that works pretty well, but of course additional maintenance would really help. I also wanted to highlight the NIT score map here they have. So KIB, I believe every 3 years updates their strategic plan, and recently they've started this key neighborhood identification tool. So they take some of the key pieces from our social vulnerability index. They also bring in MAC data to understand where people are requesting trees, et cetera, and then identify neighborhoods where their highest priorities are to plant trees. They still utilize, a variety of methods of engagement where neighborhoods can request trees through KIB, but this does identify where they want to focus the most of their resources.
There is a KIB near me that it went near like Rhodius Park. It was on Morris Street or somewhere like over there. It's by a library on Knapp and Morris, and the KIB people had went through there, and people had questions mostly about like, well, how far do these routes go? Because like we still have septic, we still have sewer and electrical. So like, are these things gonna get destroyed? And apparently they're like picked primarily picked because their roots don't go that deep. They're pretty shallow. But then that made me worry. Is like, all right, well, if you have a really bad windstorm and this tree is kind of getting big, will that thing just like roll over and hit a car? So, just be aware of what's going on if you're gonna go with KIB or a tree.
And Councilor Roberts, you've identified all the benefits with trees as well.
Look at my district up there, all white up there. You can see the sustainability in effect.
Lots
Say a
of
white?
benefits for your residents as well, right? So.
You say what? What?
Okay, within the public health and safety element, again, a lot of the work is led by OPHS, and so really the key piece here is frequent check-ins with the director and team. But I did want to highlight this Health in All Policies initiative. The Marion County Health Department, it is an action item in Thrive, and recently the Marion County Health Department hired a coordinator to lead this work, so that the health department can really serve as a technical resource and bring this to us as a tool that we can begin to use when doing our work. And so we're going to start with a checklist and kind of feel it out from there. Hopefully more to report back soon. Okay, we're almost there. 2 more. So transportation and land use. All right, so this element is really focused on creating connected systems, allowing for equitable accessibility in multiple modes of transportation. A lot of our, I will say this has many champions throughout DPW and DMD, and then OOS is also involved. A lot of the work coming out of the Office of Sustainability is funded through the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Program, a DOT program, national. And so this, we've hosted a showcase 3 years now as a part of our Highly Evolved program, in which we've created a public education campaign around dispelling the myths of electric vehicles. Range anxiety is one that a lot of people face and are often too intimidated to get an electric vehicle. And so this showcase provided an opportunity for residents to come out and maybe test drive. It was kind of difficult to get dealerships there because their busy days are Saturdays and we're always hosting on a Saturday. But we do have a lot of EV enthusiasts that are willing to talk about their cars for a lot of time. And so we invited these groups, and they were wonderful ambassadors, making everyone feel really comfortable. And I think it also helps hearing it from someone that is not trying to sell you a car, right? Of like all the things they're able to do in their EV. So it was a really cool experience. That event has grown in different ways over the 3 years we've hosted it. It started on the Circle, then we moved it up north, and then over to the AMP, and it has looked a little different each time, but it's always a really funny event. Also worth noting that funding is going to pause for about 1.5 years, but hopefully in the future we'll receive it again and pick up this. Well, it'll also be reassessing what is needed at the time. Maybe everyone has adopted an EV by then. The adoption rates are climbing significantly, so we'll figure that out at the time.
I will tell you my experience with this because I went last year and I went back in 2022. What did I? No, it was 23 and 22. I don't know, whatever it was, but I went to 2 of them. There was one over on the church near 96th Street, and it was a pretty good event. People were relatively able to answer questions, except for Indigo. Indigo, and I'll tell you this story. I go over there and I start talking. It's like, oh, this is an electric bus. He goes, yeah. I'm like, well, that's cool. It's like, where are the batteries at? He goes, on the bottom. And we start talking a little bit more, and he says, oh yeah, it's when you're driving at slow speed, the electric part comes in, but then when you hit high speed, the diesel motor kicks in. I'm like, oh, so it's a hybrid. He goes, no, it's electric. I'm like, okay, you know what? I didn't want to make him feel like an idiot. I was just trying to maintain a good attitude. But it's like, if you're gonna tell people one thing and it's not, it's like you got to get better representation. And then here's the deal: like, I know my shit about electric cars. All right, I did the training. I have the AAC. I got the certification for it. I work on Teslas, and I like, you're not gonna be able to beat me on most of this stuff. And I do constant research and training on this stuff. So when I go there and I'm like trying to ask basic questions and people can't answer them, I have a pretty big problem with that. I'll tell you another story too. I was talking to this EV rental car company in Indy called Motor, and I was talking to this woman about like, well, how do you charge them if you don't have a garage? Like, what if there's only street parking? And she goes, yeah, that we have had that problem before, and we try to have like designated spots. I'm like, well, couldn't somebody just like walk in, who's like, well, it sucks for you kind of deal? It's like, yeah, so we have to be pretty particular, but there are tax rebates for it. I'm like, well, like, what's the most somebody has had to spend for this? Because the rebate's only for so much, and then what's after? And then he goes, like $10,000. I think that's how much it was. It was $10,000 to get a charging area put into their driveway or his garage. And I'm not sure if that was a like a level 2 or a level 3, but most of them are run off of 110. It takes like 8 hours to charge it. A person I just talked to, they upgraded their charging cable from a 110 to 220, and they already had it wired in their house or outside of their house for it. But it's like, well, can can the grid handle it is one thing. How much more money is your electric bill going to be? Like, what's the cost involved with getting a better charging station so it doesn't take eight hours to charge the battery on it? And when I went to this other one last year at the amp, I mean, there was nobody there, and the basic questions I was asking, like nobody could answer. Like I asked this one lady that because they have an area where you could run on a bicycle, and I have this idea. It's actually part of my plan. Is I was like, well, how long would it take for you to charge like a car battery? Or like, what are the amps they're producing on this thing? And she couldn't answer. And I was asking some other lady about rebates. And she's like, oh, well, I don't really have the answer. My boss is here for all of that. And he was talking to somebody else. So now, like, if you're going to have these kind of events, you got to make sure you get the right representation of people that know what they're talking about. Because somebody can just go over there and debunk them who has like a worse attitude than I do. And they're out there. Listen, I was being pretty nice at that time. But moving on.
And finally, waste and recycling. I'm going to touch on two pieces that you might be surprised because I'm not talking about the big universal recycling initiative, primarily because that's currently in RFP. So I wanted to highlight our waste minimization guidebook.
And can I just restate that we're going to have an update on recycling and where
Yes,
the
thank you.
department is in the
say that.
April meeting. So I want to let them get through this sensitive bureaucratic phase they're in.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you, Chairman. So the waste minimization guidebook, it is an action item in Thrive Indianapolis. And I think that really comes from the idea of like, we host a lot of events in Indy, we're known for that. And so having a strategy to reduce our waste at all of these events would be really cool. And so we're working with Sports Corp and USA Swimming for the upcoming large event, the swimming trials in June, to create a guidebook that we can hopefully implement at this event and future events can also implement. A key piece of that will actually be diverting food waste. This anaerobic digester will definitely not be available, ready by then. But IMS, the Motor Speedway, is working with the American Dairy Association and this company,
What is
called
this
Nutrient
crap?
to explore the implementation of an
Anaerobic
renewable,
digest.
basically of a anaerobic digester. And this little graphic here explains that. It's a complicated thing, but basically it's a way to divert food waste
biogas.
from our landfill, which causes methane when it's broken down in the landfill. It's a way to divert that, and then you actually create renewable energy out of it. It's a really cool initiative. We'd be able to work with our local restaurants to take their food waste.
Or you can turn it
I'm
into a
not sure if there's ever a
compost.
future, like an immediate future in which we would begin to, roll out a curbside program directly related to this. But the immediate future could be with our restaurant community.
Charge your house with your farts.
And that is for the people at home, how to find us.
Thank you, Director. And let me get the questions. Just one for me to get started. So two. On your last comment about some version, I'm going to anaerobic digester, or that's some version of composting, I presume. So that there are currently small, locally based composting entities that will come to your house and do a curbside composting collection.
There aren't.
Just FYI, I happen to be someone who does that, and one of the people who runs it is at the Broad Ripple Farmers Market every week once that kicks off. So just a shout out for District 7 and the Broad Ripple Farmers Market. On recycling, I know a big challenge that we have is the recycling locations.
Sure.
And I'm thinking of the one in Broad Ripple Park is frequently at capacity or well over capacity. And I also have noted, and I think you and I have discussed in the past, that there's some aspirational recycling that's taking place, combined with some actual dumping, like some trash dumping. So it's people who are committed to
that
recycling,
DPW's
who
problem?
are bringing their stuff there. There's people who are aspirationally recycling, putting things that aren't going to be appropriate for recycling, and people who are bringing the things that are carpet remnants and so on. So is there, knowing that people are bringing things that would otherwise be dumping or would be more appropriately going to the dump, is there have you ever thought about, at that location, since people are bringing that stuff, is there a concurrent receptacle that could get things that are not for recycling to help reduce the amount of inappropriate waste going into the recycling containers?
These are all great questions. We spend a lot of time talking about these sites, primarily because they are illegal dumping issues. There are many of them. Sean Screws, our Deputy Director of Solid Waste, spends a significant amount of time going to these sites to clean up the messes that are made. We've explored the idea of adding an additional receptacle that is trash, but we're not sure that would actually work, because you would just fill up the trash and then do that, and we'd probably have more contamination at the end of the day, and our appropriate means of disposal are not that expensive. You know, the Citizens Transfer Station is literally like $2 or $5.
Right.
We also have bulk heavy pickup, and our crews will come pick up these large items from you. So we're working on public education around this, and then working with BNS really diligently to understand how we can begin to combat it through fining as well.
Dude, you want to know how to solve this? Find the fuck out of them. That's how you do it. Arrest them. That's all you have to do. Set the point. That's it's so hard, but you guys keep wanting to take this holistic measure, like, oh, maybe if we just do some like pandering or some petty way of doing it, we just move it to the other one, like some passive aggressive policy. That's what you're doing.
So there's a lot of moving pieces there. Right now, it's really important that residents that are not at a single-family home have access to recycling as well, and so I do see that as a access issue, and so I am hopeful in 2026 we have a new version of recycling drop-off sites. There are a lot of different models in other cities that work at least better. We see staffed facilities, with fences around them, and you come and drop off your item. And so we've been exploring that for a while now. And there might be less, we wouldn't have as many around the entire county, but staffing or some other better solution in addition to the eventual future, whatever curbside recycling looks like, would be my goal.
Okay, thank you for working on that. And if you're looking to pilot one or to have, the mayor has a successful summer jobs program, doing a pilot with some of those young folks at Broadwell Park to be there and help people, guide them to how to recycle appropriately and divert the waste to the right place. I'd love to see something like that, and more than happy to volunteer that to happen in Council District 7. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Others? Councilor Hart.
I got a couple things. Maybe the first one you might not be able to answer given the case of the RFP, but you bring up an interesting point when you talk about those recycling containers.
Sure.
I'm a big fan, use them all the time. I'm also a Republic recycler. But I had the opportunity to go tour Covanta the other day with a couple of my colleagues that are both right here. One of the things that I remember recognizing there is one of those same recycling containers at Covanta. And so if anybody who's not familiar with Covanta burns our trash and turns it into steam. I asked the guy on site, I was like, why is this here? Shouldn't this be at the recycling?
Yeah.
And they did say that they will they will go through it first before it comes to Covanta to check, but it must have just had too many contaminants in it for it to be actually recyclable. But that brings me around to the question part. And don't get me wrong, if I could save $40 a month or whatever it is I'm paying Republic right now on a curbside program, I guess I'd use my tax dollars to do it. But how do you offset, right? Again, I'm all for it. And I've talked to other people in tons of other cities and seen a lot of different examples. But knowing that we have Covanta here, how do we offset how cheap Covanta is and the cost per tonnage and put that recycling program in?
That was a great question. So in Indiana, this actually brings me to the series in which we explored recycling, the 3-part series last year. We had a number of end users come here and talk about how they need more feedstock for their Indiana-based company. Knopf and Brightmark are two that I'm immediately thinking of. Brightmark turns all types of plastics into diesel fuel, and Knopf turns glass bottles into fiberglass insulation. They have both told us that they have to truck in their feedstock of recycled commodity material from other states because we do not have enough to feed their operations. And so I look at it as a job creator. It is creating jobs for us, and that is valuable commodities that we should be diverting from Covanta, because like that is, in my opinion, it is better than a landfill, I hear you, but preferred to separate out of those.
So that was just my first question, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, and again, would love to see it, but just going back to the beginning part of that story
Sure.
of it was a recycling container getting burned up. But I'll end
I
there.
hear you. It's tough.
So when I look at the front page that you sent us here, the first thing that jumps out at me is the ambitious goal for reaching a carbon neutrality by 2050. So we are a fifth of the way there. I'm doing a little napkin math here. I'm just curious what our current carbon score is and if we are on track to hit 0 in the next 4/5 of
Yeah.
the term.
That's a great question. So we conduct a greenhouse gas inventory every 3 years. This past summer, we did undertake an effort to do so. I will say there's always questions in terms of exactly what the data is. It's hard to even ensure that we're comparing that the people that give us the data is the same type of data that we're going through. And so while I can't say with full confidence that we are on track, because Indianapolis is also growing, right? And even if we were on track, that would not ensure that we're actually going to reach carbon neutrality. I would say the entire world is grappling with how we're going to reach this. There's a lot of pieces at play, including where we get our energy from.
So just mind, I'll give you some info. Our population went down last census reading. Just
That's
FYI.
true.
But beyond that, I think it'd be interesting to see as a committee what our goals are from a sustainability practice and where we're at as a city, because it's our responsibility as members of this committee to help you achieve your goals. So if we don't know where we're at
Yep.
to where the goal is,
Sure.
how can we help you be successful?
Right, and there are some really cool tools out there that can help us track that a
She
little
doesn't
bit
know.
closer and understand, like, if we're doing this, where will that get us? Right now, we don't have any of those tools, and so saying with full confidence to you, like, this is where we're at, is just pretty difficult for me.
That's your fucking job. Sorry, I gotta hit the swear jar in this, but like, that's what you're paid for, isn't it? Like, we're gonna try and get net neutrality at 2050, but we don't even know what track we're on right now. Oh, we just need more money.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
She knows she messed up too.
You mentioned earlier you're working on some outbound communication on the appropriate use of the recycling sites and so on. When all that is ready, just let me know and others. I'm sure we'd be happy to amplify that message and make sure that gets out. On You mentioned this huge opportunity from grants, and one specifically that's a big one that we're doing in partnership with others. As far as the entire panoply of grants that are coming out of the federal level, do we have an overall strategy of what we're going for? That is, did you list everything that we're pursuing? Is there a sequence of grant opportunities we're seeking, and do you have the resources you need to get that?
Yeah, so I've listed everything that we're currently, that we've currently submitted. There's a few that we're kind of determining if there's a partnership available to us, or, you know, someone wanting to partner on with us. And I did not list all of the programs that would be funded through that large $500 million one. It's the question in terms of, do we have capacity? There are just so many that you really have to choose where to focus. We do allow Thrive to help us focus that.
Right.
And when a community partner comes to us and say, we want to partner on this, that is certainly one I would absolutely prioritize. So putting out that call, there's some really cool, you know, EPA community change grants and other things that we would just need the right partner to help us do that instrumental implementation work on the ground.
Okay, great. I just don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish. If we need some resources, then council can support that, and we can pursue additional federal resources. We'd love to be supportive of that.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments or questions from councilors? Councilor Cahill. Yep.
Thank you for answering most of my questions that I sent you in advance. Just to clarify, on the highly evolved event, you said the funding is paused from the grant side.
Yes.
Does that mean the event itself will pause?
Currently, yes. We don't have alternative funding for that yet.
Do we need funding for it? I mean, having attended the event, it did not appear they.
I'm glad you attended it.
I participated, in fact. So I.
You were one of our EV.
I was. I showed off my car, everything.
Thank you, Counselor.
It did. I saw lots of billboards.
Yeah.
But
So-
most of the people that attended
Yes.
came because of the Facebook event, which was free to post.
Right.
The actual day of the event, the staff there, I would tell you, if they weren't there at all, I don't think I would have noticed. Sorry.
It's true. I was just talking about it.
I saw the social media. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm not understanding why the federal funding is the cause
Contingent.
for us to, yes. Why can't we do that
That's a great
ourselves? Because, I mean, frankly, there are other car shows that I see throughout the city for other events, and they don't need federal funding to say, hey, everybody bring your 50s or 60s car, your muscle car night or whatever. They just
So
find a place.
That is currently the route in which we plan that event with the support we have through that federal funding. We've been discussing internally we do not want there to be a pause in the presence of these brands, and so we are discussing how we can prepare for the pause in funding.
Okay.
And so I think that can certainly be one of the points that we take into consideration planning on our own. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, there are key pieces, of course, the marketing, there's just some other things that did take some funding, but we have also prepared ourselves with some of the items that can help us.
Okay.
Sorry.
And then I know you mentioned the charging and fueling infrastructure grant you did not receive, but, and I know this is really technically a state program, but the Go EV
Sure.
IN, it's odd to me. Is there any coordination as, like, if you were pursuing this other grant, have they coordinated with the city?
So they coordinated directly with AES Indiana. I can't speak to this one specifically. There's a similar federal, so this is from the Volkswagen settlement funds. There's a similar
the
program
Dieselgate stuff?
at the federal level that the state is implementing, NEVI.
I know.
Cannot recall what that stands for.
I will tell you what, I know just about everything to do with Dieselgate. If you guys want to know, I can do a quick like 5-minute video on that if you want.
But the requirements around that were that you be less than a mile from the highway and that you're in public on public property. No, back up, that's the other grant. That you're on private property, and so they partnered with gas stations in most instances there. On this specific one, I've reached out to AES Indiana, my
Okay.
contact there, to ask for a map of where they are in Marion County, because that website that you cited actually takes you to the DOT website.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
The map of it, but I can tell you, having looked at PlugShare and some of the others and just driving around,
Right.
AES Indiana has not installed one, which is a little bit disheartening because other more rural areas have made progress, and I don't understand why AES Indiana has not. And I'm curious as to where are they, because we do talk about some of the social justice and things like that, and some of the things that frankly, urban areas, NEVI is not intended to serve the urban environment.
Right.
Because NEVI is designed to place one every 50 miles. They are, to your point, they're at truck stops as you go down the road, which is fine for road trips. But when you talk about local adoption for people that live in apartments that are not going to have a chance to charge at
Absolutely.
home, that's the program that's going to help Indianapolis.
Yeah, and so we also have the Reimagining the Curb initiative. That should be progressing soon to give additional spots as well. But I'll follow up with our contact and get you a
Okay.
better answer.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Anyone else? Okay, one final question, Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Director Mickelson. I think just to put a lot of these questions into context, and first off, congratulations and thank you for, I think, being a model to the city of how to be scrappy, use resources well,
Shut up.
partner with private organizations, partner with nonprofits, just figure out, not be ideological about it, just figure out what's going to work. It's in that context that I wonder if you could characterize the size of your department compared to similar sized cities across the country, and the funding of your department compared to similar sized cities across the country.
Yeah, so Cincinnati, Ohio is one that I often look to. Now, they are fundamentally different in that they also have a number of environmental management team members that are housed within their Office of Environment and Sustainability. They're a team of, I believe, 18. So I would say half of that is sustainability, half of that is their environmental regulatory arm. I can't speak to the funding for that city offhand. In Indiana, we have Bloomington and South Bend are two of the ones that we work with regularly. Evansville now has some staff additionally. Evansville has 2 staff, Bloomington has 2 staff. I would say Bloomington has dedicated funding for programs, but not their staff. And South Bend, I believe, is a team of 3 with also dedicated funding for programs. And so we're a team of 4 and funded out of the DPW General Fund.
Thank you. The one other thing I wanted to say, which I think speaks to both what Chairman Barth and Councilor Cahill mentioned earlier, is I think all of us on this committee are big supporters of the work you're doing, and I wonder whether there couldn't be a way to identify gaps or needs that we could, maybe it's, we can help staff the event if we have to do a lower volume, lower cost show, for that particular example. Because I imagine, similar to applying for grants, like you have to pick and choose. You can't go after everything, even though you're kind of already going after a ton. But perhaps if there is like, hey, these didn't make the cut for what our limited staff and funding could justify, but if there are community partners, like let us help,
I appreciate it. Thank you.
socialize that and help you out. That's all.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. And thanks to the committee members. And to your point, I've thought a lot about that topic too, and I've shared my thoughts with the director. I'd love to see more resources. With the resources we have, I think the director and the team punches way above their weight in doing incredibly good work. So we thank them for that. So thank you for your presentation today and for all your work getting to this point. And thanks to all the counselors for being here tonight, and to the folks from the Parks Department. And we'll take next month off, but we'll resume in April
Yeah, we'll
with
see.
some more detail on the status of recycling and some of these other matters that I have highlighted. And so I look forward to seeing everyone back here in April. With that, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Well, that was fun, but not really. It was, man, I was getting, I feel like I was getting my ears waterboarded through that whole thing. Listen, we know this whole department is a giant joke. It has been since day one, and if she can't even answer on like what track we are for this 2050 neutrality or whatever bullshit it is, then what are you exactly doing? You're just trying to make it like, oh, I really deserve this job, is what it sounds like. But I do want to point something out. Morgan Mickelson is a Democrat op, which we kind of already know that. But when you are part of the Hoosier Woman Forward, to me, that feels like a conflict of interest. And I would say this on both sides, honestly. Like, if you're part of something that says we're trying to empower Democrats and you work for the city that, by the way, is mostly 60-40, but you're not supposed to be choosing a side. You're supposed to be in the middle of the aisle and you're part of this thing. Really, you should be fired. I don't care if it's on the left or the right. I think you should be fired. You're here to work for the people, not your party. But that's just my opinion because I like not equality. I don't like equality. I like a fair game of there's no bias towards anything. But if you go and check out her LinkedIn, you'll see that she's been part of this whole environment crap her entire career, going from even to a different country and studying over there. So as you heard, Barth, there's no meeting next month. Who knows if there'll be one in April because the primary is right around the corner, and these people might be helping others campaign. So who could say how that's going to go? Just a quick update too. There was supposed to be a meeting today, a community affairs meeting. I think that got canceled. I didn't see it on the stream. So I will do a witty review Friday probably. Friday because I'm going to a convention on Saturday, and you know what? Maybe I'll talk about Dieselgate too on witty review and some very interesting things that happened today. And this is a warning out to everybody that wants to make false accusations onto me, is that I will spend the money to make sure that you stop, because you spreading blatant lies about me that's over now. And I'm putting my foot down and I'll throw the dollars out there to make sure that there are consequences to spreading straight lies about me. But that's all I can say right now because I signed an agreement, but I'm sure that special someone will talk about it this week. So, until next time, until Friday for Witty Review.